Before the world had printing presses or glowing screens, before knowledge could travel at the speed of light, there was a single place where humanity's curiosity gathered like stars in a night sky. Imagine a city where every ship that touched its harbor carried not just cargo but wisdom, scrolls of forgotten kingdoms, songs of vanished poets, secrets of the heavens written in languages older than empires. Somewhere along the sun-struck coast of the Mediterranean, amid the salt of the sea and the scent of papyrus, a dream took form to capture all the knowledge of the world and guard it against the erosion of time. It was a dream so daring, it seemed almost divine. They called it the Library of Alexandria. But dreams are fragile. Flames can swallow parchment as quickly as ambition can ignite it. As we journey back to the beginning, we step into an age when knowledge was power, and power was a flame that could both illuminate and destroy. The story begins on the northern edge of Egypt, where the Nile kisses the Mediterranean in a haze of silver and sand. In the 3rd century BCE, the city of Alexandria shimmered like a jewel of marble and limestone, its skyline pierced by the towering Pharos lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Commissioned by Alexander the Great and brought to life by his successors, the city was no mere settlement, it was a proclamation. Alexandria was to be the new capital of intellect, a meeting ground where Greek philosophy, Egyptian mystery, Persian mathematics, and Indian medicine could converge. The library rose within the precincts of the royal quarter, near the great palaces of the Ptolemaic dynasty. White columns gleamed in the Mediterranean sun, their shadows stretching across courtyards alive with scholars and scribes. Legend speaks of thousands upon thousands of scrolls, each a fragile vessel of human thought. Ships docking in the harbor were compelled to surrender their manuscripts for copying, their captains perhaps unaware that their words would soon join an ever-growing constellation of knowledge. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of ink and oil papyrus. Imagine the hushed murmur of philosophers debating the movement of the stars, the rustle of scrolls as mathematicians recorded the mysteries of numbers, the soft scratching of pens racing against time. This was not merely a library, it was a forge. Ideas sparked and collided, shaping the very sciences and philosophies that would echo across millennia. The Ptolemies, successors of Alexander, were both patrons and protectors. They dreamed of nothing less than capturing the totality of the world's wisdom. Caravans brought writings from the deserts of Arabia, ships carried texts from the far-off ports of India, envoys returned from Greece and Mesopotamia with scrolls cradled like treasure. To step inside the library was to walk into the very mind of humanity, a place where the known met the unimaginable. Yet even in its infancy, shadows stretched across this paradise of intellect. Knowledge is power, and power invites envy. Rival cities watched Alexandria's rise with clenched fists, while political storms brewed across the Mediterranean. The library, though sacred to scholars, was built in a world of kings and armies. Its marble halls stood not only as monuments to enlightenment but as tempting trophies for those who wielded the sword. As night fell over the Pharos and the sea turned to black glass, torches flickered along the library's colonnades. Within those walls, scribes worked by lamplight, determined to capture the whispers of civilizations long gone. None could imagine how fleeting their triumph would be, how easily centuries of brilliance could be reduced to smoke. The dream had begun, radiant and unstoppable. But dreams, as history will show, burn brightest just before the darkness descends. And beyond the city's glittering harbor, distant empires stirred, carrying with them the sparks that would one day threaten to consume the greatest repository of knowledge the ancient world had ever known. The age of wonder had dawned, the age of peril waited beyond the horizon. The Mediterranean morning spills gold across Alexandria's marble colonnades, bathing the newborn city in a glow that seems almost prophetic. The Pharos lighthouse gleams like a celestial pillar, guiding ships from every corner of the known world into a harbor alive with the cries of sailors and the scent of salt and spice. Beneath this spectacle of trade and ambition, a dynasty of rulers sets its sights on something far greater than conquest. These are the Ptolemies, Greek monarchs who inherited Egypt after the whirlwind campaigns of Alexander the Great, and their weapon is not the sword, but the written word. In the echoing halls of the royal palace, Ptolemy Isoter envisions a kingdom where knowledge itself is the throne. His dream is audacious, to gather every text, every fragment of wisdom from every civilization, and bind the world's intellect beneath Alexandria's banner. His successors, most notably Ptolemy II Philadelphus, will turn this vision into a fevered quest. Edicts are issued. Ships entering the harbor are required to surrender their scrolls for copying. Originals are retained in the library, while replicas are returned to their owners. Merchants whisper of this bold decree as scribes in the Malcyon, the grand research institute adjoining the library, work day and night, their styluses racing across fresh papyrus. The Malcyon is more than a sanctuary of scholars. It is a living laboratory, a hive of minds drawn from Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and lands beyond the industry. Within its lecture halls, philosophers debate the geometry of the cosmos, physicians dissect the secrets of the human body, and linguists attempt to catalog the tongues of distant tribes. Poets compose verses that will echo through eternity, while mathematicians plot the movements of the stars. The Ptolemies fund their research lavishly, providing stipends, housing, and endless supplies of papyrus. In a world where most rulers measure greatness in territory, these pharaoh kings measure it in thought. Their ambitions stretch beyond the Mediterranean. Envoys are dispatched to India, to Persia, to the courts of distant kings, carrying gifts and returning with precious manuscripts. Captains braving the Red Sea bring back texts on astronomy and medicine from the East. Priests from Egypt contribute sacred hymns and records carved on ancient stone, their hieroglyphs carefully copied into Greek. Each scroll is a captured world, myths of creation, treatises on government, formulas for medicine, charts of the stars. The library grows like a living organism, absorbing the lifeblood of countless cultures. Yet beneath the grandeur lies tension. The Ptolemies, though Greek in heritage, rule over a deeply Egyptian land. To the native priests and scribes, these foreign monarchs are both patrons and intruders. Temples that once guarded the secrets of the Nile now watch as their scrolls are translated into Greek and stored in royal archives. Some welcome this exchange, believing it a path to immortality. Others see it as theft, the slow draining of Egypt's ancient soul into the hands of outsiders. Politics swirl through the marble corridors like desert winds. Alliances with Greek city-states must be managed, rival kings appeased or intimidated. Even as the library grows, Alexandria itself becomes a stage for power plays, its scholars sometimes pawns in the games of kings. A mathematician's discovery might delight the Ptolemaic court one day and offend it the next, depending on how it reflects the monarch's prestige. The pursuit of knowledge, though noble, is never free from the gravity of power. Still, the flame of curiosity burns brighter than intrigue. Picture Eratosthenes, the polymath who will one day measure the circumference of the earth with astonishing accuracy, pacing the library's colonnades as he compares scrolls from Babylon and India. Imagine Callimachus, the poet-scholar, painstakingly compiling the first great catalog of the library's holdings, a map of human thought itself. These figures move like constellations through the Alexandrian night, their discoveries illuminating the world far beyond Egypt's shores. The city becomes a beacon not only for knowledge but for ambition. Students arrive from Athens, Rhodes, and Antioch, their minds hungry for the treasures whispered to lie within the library's walls. They enter a realm where the air smells of ink and oil, where the soft scratch of pens mingles with the distant roar of the sea. For them, Alexandria is not just a city, it is the universe rendered in papyrus. As the century unfolds, the Ptolemies stand as philosopher kings, their dynasty a rare fusion of royal grandeur and intellectual daring. They are the pharaohs of knowledge, rulers who see in the written word a power greater than armies. Yet even in this golden age, cracks begin to show. The wider Mediterranean churns with rivalries, Rome rising in the west, Seleucid kings scheming in the east. The Ptolemies may command the greatest library the world has ever known, but the storms of politics and war are gathering beyond the horizon. Night falls over the harbor. The lighthouse sends its steady beam across the darkened sea, a silent promise to travelers that wisdom and refuge await. Inside the library, lamplight flickers on countless scrolls, each one a fragile heartbeat of human memory. The Ptolemies' dream thrives, but dreams, as history will reveal, are as combustible as the papyrus on which they are written. The rulers of Alexandria have lit a fire of knowledge that will change the course of civilizations. But beyond the shimmering horizon, forces are awakening that care little for wisdom and everything for power. The next chapter of the library's story will unfold not in the calm of study, but in the shadow of approaching storms. Morning mist drifts over the Mediterranean like a gauze of silver as ships from distant horizons glide toward Alexandria's harbor. Their sails bear the scents of far-off lands, cedar from Lebanon, cinnamon from India, parchment from Greece. Each vessel is more than a merchant of goods, each is a courier of memory, carrying fragments of entire civilizations rolled tightly into scrolls and sealed against the salt air. Dockworkers shout in a dozen languages as officials of the Ptolemaic court stride the wharves, eyes sharp for more than cargo. By royal decree, every manuscript, every scrap of writing aboard these ships must be surrendered for copying. Knowledge is the tribute Alexandria demands, and the library is its insatiable heart. From these bustling piers, a river of words flows inward. Scrolls from Athens carry the dialogues of Plato and Aristotle, their inked debates on the soul and the state still fresh from the philosopher's own students. From Babylon come star charts etched with the wisdom of Chaldean astronomers who watched the heavens long before Alexander dreamed of empire. Egyptian priests arrive with papyri that breathe the hymns of the Nile, while traders from the Indus Valley present treatises on medicine, surgery, and the mysterious art of numbers. To Alexandria come maps of the known world and conjectures of lands yet unseen. Caravans crossing the Arabian deserts bring tales written in the flowing scripts of Arabia and Judea. Messengers from distant China carry the first whispers of silk-making and herbal remedies, their knowledge carefully translated by interpreters who struggle to bridge worlds with words. Even the rugged scrolls of Celtic tribes, collected by ambitious Greek travelers, find their way to these marble halls. No culture is too obscure, no dialect too strange. If it holds a fragment of truth, it belongs within the library's embrace. Inside the grand complex of the Mouse Ion, the air vibrates with this convergence of worlds. Scribes bend over fresh papyrus, their reed pens scratching like the soft hiss of waves. Each scroll is examined, copied, and catalogued with almost religious precision. Some are returned to their owners, others, deemed too valuable, remain in Alexandria, their originals stored in hidden chambers while duplicates are sent back across the seas. The library grows not merely in size but in depth, layer upon layer of human understanding preserved against the erosion of time. Among the scholars, a sense of awe mixes with urgency. To them, these scrolls are not lifeless artifacts, they are living voices. A Babylonian tablet describing an eclipse might unlock the secrets of celestial mechanics. A papyrus hymn to Osiris might conceal the origins of a universal myth. A treatise on Indian mathematics might reveal patterns that bind the cosmos itself. Each discovery sparks debates that echo through the marble colonnades, arguments on the movement of planets, the structure of the human body, the meaning of existence. The library becomes a crossroads where civilizations meet not in battle but in dialogue. Greek philosophers challenge Egyptian priests on the nature of the soul. Indian mathematicians exchange ideas with Babylonian astronomers about the rhythms of the heavens. Translators labor to capture not just words but the essence of alien concepts, their efforts forging new languages of thought. Alexandria transforms into a living map of the human mind, where East meets West and ancient meets modern in a ceaseless symphony of ideas. Yet this glorious flood of knowledge is not without its tensions. Some scrolls arrive with conflicting truths, contradictory accounts of history, rival explanations of the stars. Scholars clash over whose calculations are correct, whose gods are real, whose medicines truly heal. For every discovery that unites, another divides. The very abundance that makes the library magnificent also makes it volatile, a tinderbox of competing theories waiting for the spark of debate. And beyond the city's white walls, the world grows restless. Rival powers Alexandria's treasures with hungry ambition. To them, these scrolls are more than parchment, they are the keys to navigation, warfare, and wealth. Rome rises in the west, its legions marching closer with each generation. In the east, Seleucid kings seek to reclaim the intellectual supremacy once held by Babylon and Athens. The library's collection is not merely a wonder of learning, it is a prize that could tilt the balance of empires. As twilight settles over the harbor, the Pharos lighthouse ignites its beacon, casting a path of fire across the sea. Within the library, lamplight flickers against towering shelves where scrolls from every known world rest in fragile silence. Scribes close their ink pots and scholars gather their notes, unaware that the very knowledge they preserve may one day draw the flames of war. The collection swells, a universe of thought captured in papyrus and ink. But with each scroll that enters Alexandria, the stakes grow higher. Knowledge is power, and power, no matter how carefully guarded, always attracts the storm. The next era will test whether the library's walls can protect not just parchment, but the very dream of preserving all that humanity has ever known. Night settles over Alexandria like a velvet canopy, pierced by the steady glow of oil lamps that burn within the library's marble halls. Here, beneath frescoed ceilings and echoing colonnades, some of the greatest intellects of the ancient world gather, not kings or conquerors, but thinkers whose weapons are ink and imagination. Their footsteps echo against stone as they pass beneath towering shelves of scrolls, each containing a fragment of the cosmos. This is the beating heart of the Mouse Ion, where minds sharpened by curiosity dare to map the universe itself. Eratosthenes, the polymath of Cyrene, strides across the courtyard with a mathematician's precision. Appointed chief librarian, he measures the earth with nothing but shadows and geometry. By observing the angle of the sun at different cities, he calculates the planet's circumference with astonishing accuracy, his numbers only a whisper away from modern measurements. In an age when many still fear sailing beyond the horizon, Eratosthenes proves the earth is a sphere and dares to chart it. Nearby, the astronomer Aristarchus peers through instruments of brass and wood, proposing a radical idea that the earth orbits the sun, not the other way around. His heliocentric theory, bold and disquieting, flickers like a spark far ahead of its time. Though his contemporaries dismiss it, the thought lingers, a seed awaiting the fertile soil of future centuries. The physician Herophilus bends over a dissecting table, his scalpel glinting in the lamplight. In a society that reveres the body as sacred, he dares to explore its inner workings, tracing the pulsing network of veins, distinguishing between nerves and tendons, and identifying the brain, not the heart, as the seat of thought. His discoveries will echo through the corridors of medicine for millennia, though many will later forget the man who first revealed them. In adjoining chambers, Callimachus compiles his Penox, the first great catalog of the library's treasures, a vast index that maps the knowledge of the known world. Each entry is a signpost pointing scholars toward hidden wisdom. Without such order, the library's ocean of scrolls would drown even the most determined mind. His work becomes the skeleton upon which centuries of scholarship will hang. The air hums with debate. Mathematicians argue over the principles of geometry. Poets refine their verses, bending language into music. Philosophers wrestle with the nature of existence itself, their voices rising and falling like the surf beyond the city walls. Within these marble corridors, the human intellect stretches toward the infinite, reaching for truths as vast as the night sky. Yet even here, ambition and rivalry seep through the cracks. The Mouse Ion is a sanctuary, but it is also a court where reputations are made and destroyed. A mathematician's miscalculation can end a career, a physician's bold experiment might invite accusations of impiety. The Ptolemies, though generous patrons, watch closely, knowing that knowledge is a form of power. To win their favor is to secure resources and fame, to lose it is to vanish into obscurity. Despite these tensions, discoveries flow outward from Alexandria like ripples in a boundless sea. Greek sailors use Alexandrian star charts to navigate the treacherous Mediterranean. Egyptian farmers adopt improved irrigation techniques drawn from mathematical treatises. Physicians across the ancient world copy the findings of Herophilus, even as they forget his name. The library becomes a silent engine driving progress across continents. Picture the scene on a warm spring night, scholars gathered in an open courtyard, debating the movement of distant planets as the constellations wheel overhead. Torches flicker in the breeze, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Somewhere within the labyrinth of scrolls, a scribe finishes copying a Babylonian text on eclipses, unaware that his careful work will guide astronomers centuries hence. Knowledge moves here like the tide, quiet, relentless, and unstoppable. But the thinkers of Alexandria are not merely collectors of facts, they are dreamers who dare to imagine the universe as an ordered whole. Their calculations and hypotheses are not cold abstractions but acts of wonder, attempts to decipher the handwriting of the gods. Each theorem is a prayer, each discovery a revelation. Beyond the city walls, however, the world grows restless. Rome tightens its grip on the Mediterranean, and rival dynasties circle Egypt like hawks. The scholars of the library may chart the heavens, but they cannot predict the storms of politics gathering on the horizon. Their equations cannot halt the march of armies, nor can their instruments measure the ambitions of kings. Still, they labor on, scribes and scientists alike, believing that knowledge itself might outlast the fragility of empires. As the Pharos lighthouse casts its unwavering beam across the dark sea, these minds, brilliant, fragile, and mortal, etch their visions into papyrus, hoping to preserve them against the consuming fire of time. For now, the Library of Alexandria stands unrivaled, its halls alive with the hum of discovery. But history whispers a warning: no flame burns forever. The brilliance of these scholars will light the path of humanity, even as shadows lengthen at the edges of their world. The brilliance of Alexandria's library glows like a star across the Mediterranean, but every star casts a shadow. Outside the white walls and marble colonnades, the political world churns with rivalries and ambitions that care nothing for the fragile sanctity of scrolls. Knowledge may stretch toward eternity, yet it remains hostage to the tempests of men. The first tremors come from within Egypt itself. The Ptolemaic dynasty, once united in its vision of wisdom and wealth, begins to fracture under the weight of succession disputes and courtly intrigue. Brothers turn against sisters, queens against kings, each seeking to secure the throne of a kingdom whose treasures now include not only gold but the greatest collection of human thought ever assembled. The library, though silent, becomes a pawn in these struggles. Whoever commands it commands the prestige of enlightenment, a power as intoxicating as any army. Beyond Egypt's borders, the wider Mediterranean grows restless. To the west, the Roman Republic flexes its rising strength, its disciplined legions and relentless ambition steadily reshaping the balance of power. In the east, the Seleucid Empire eyes the wealth of the Nile, its rulers dreaming of reclaiming the intellectual supremacy once held by Babylon and Athens. Each new alliance, each naval skirmish, sends ripples through the corridors of the Malcyon, where scholars debate the motion of planets even as soldiers march closer. The library's leaders sense the danger. Scrolls of military engineering, treatises on navigation, and maps of trade routes are more than scholarly curiosities, they are strategic assets coveted by rival states. To protect them, the Ptolemies enforce strict controls over access. Certain chambers are locked behind bronze doors, their contents revealed only to trusted scholars. But secrecy breeds suspicion, and whispers spread that Alexandria hoards knowledge not for the good of mankind, but for the power of its rulers. Inside the city, the tension is palpable. The once harmonious blend of Greek settlers and native Egyptians begins to fray. Taxes rise to fund wars abroad, and resentment simmers in the crowded markets. Priests in ancient temples grumble that the Ptolemies, in their hunger for foreign wisdom, neglect the sacred traditions of the Nile. Even among the scholars, rival factions emerge, Greek philosophers clashing with Egyptian priests, mathematicians disputing the priorities of the library's acquisitions. Knowledge, once a unifying force, becomes another field of competition. The harbor, once a peaceful gateway of ideas, grows crowded with warships. Roman envoys arrive with smiles that hide sharp ambitions. Diplomats negotiate alliances in shadowed halls, while merchants whisper of pirates preying on the grain fleets that supply Rome's hungry masses. Every scroll arriving from abroad now carries not only the wisdom of its authors but the weight of dangerous secrets, new technologies, unexplored trade routes, methods of siege and defense. To possess such knowledge is to wield power, to lose it is to invite conquest. Inside the Malcyon, the scholars press on, their ink-stained hands steady despite the political tremors shaking the city. Eratosthenes still calculates distances between stars. Physicians continue their dissections by lamplight. Poets recite verses to the rhythm of the sea. But the world beyond their marble sanctuary grows ever darker, and the sound of distant drums begins to echo faintly across the Mediterranean winds. Then comes the first true test of the library's resilience, the Alexandrian War of 48 BCE. Julius Caesar, pursuing Pompey during Rome's civil conflict, sails into the city's harbor. The arrival of Roman legions throws Alexandria into chaos. Streets once filled with scholars now ring with the clash of swords and the roar of fire. During the fighting, flames consume parts of the harbor district. Ancient sources disagree on whether the library itself suffers a mortal blow in this first catastrophe, but many scrolls stored in warehouses near the docks vanish into smoke and ash. The image is haunting, crates of papyrus burning like dry leaves, centuries of thought curling into the night sky. While Caesar claims victory, the library's defenders salvage what they can, carrying precious scrolls deeper into the royal quarter. Alexandria survives, but a new reality sets in. The dream of eternal preservation is vulnerable, and no amount of scholarship can shield it from the ambitions of emperors. When the smoke clears, the city resumes its rhythm, but something has changed. The scholars work on, yet an invisible crack runs through the heart of their sanctuary. They know now that the library exists at the mercy of politics, that a single spark can undo centuries of careful collection. Outside, Rome tightens its grip on Egypt, and the Ptolemaic dynasty slides ever closer to dependence on foreign powers. As the Pharos lighthouse sends its steady beam across a restless sea, the library stands like a fortress of parchment against the rising tide of empire. But shadows lengthen along the marble corridors, and the silence of the scrolls begins to feel less like serenity and more like the hush before a storm. The age of pure pursuit is ending. Ahead lies an era in which knowledge itself will be tested by the fires of ambition, and the greatest library of the ancient world will find that even wisdom cannot escape the reach of war. The Mediterranean evening lies heavy with the scent of smoke and salt as Alexandria braces against the chaos of war. The harbor, once a stage for merchant ships laden with scrolls and spices, now churns with Roman war galleys. Torches flare along the waterfront, their reflections rippling across black water like veins of fire. Above the din of soldiers' shouts and the crash of waves, the great Pharos lighthouse beams defiantly into the night, a steady eye watching as history prepares to strike. It is 48 BCE. Julius Caesar, drawn into Egypt's dynastic civil war between the young Queen Cleopatra and her brother Ptolemy XIII, commands a small Roman force trapped within the city. Alexandria, once the sanctuary of scholars and poets, becomes a battlefield. Streets echo with the clang of steel. Marble colonnades that once framed philosophical debates now reverberate with the screams of combat. The library, guardian of the world's accumulated knowledge, stands perilously close to the harbor where the fighting rages. Desperation drives Caesar to a fateful decision. To deny the Egyptian fleet to his enemies, he orders the ships in the harbor set ablaze. Flames leap skyward, feeding on wood and pitch, carried by a sudden Mediterranean wind. What begins as a tactical maneuver becomes a wildfire. Sparks whirl upward, drifting like malignant stars across the waterfront. The warehouses near the docks, temporary storehouses for scrolls awaiting cataloging, ignite in a roar of fire. Crates of papyrus, packed with texts from Greece, Babylon, and India, burn like dry reeds, releasing a storm of ash that dances above the city. Ancient sources disagree on the exact toll. Some claim that only the harbor warehouses were consumed, others that the fire spread inward to the royal quarter itself. But all accounts speak of smoke choking the night, of scrolls curling into cinders, of scholars standing helpless as centuries of human thought vanished into flame. The very air seemed to carry the screams of lost voices, philosophers, physicians, astronomers, each scroll a universe reduced to smoke in a single night. Inside the Mouse Ion, panic ripples through the scholars. Scribes rush to secure the most precious manuscripts, their arms laden with bundles of papyrus. The marble corridors echo with hurried footsteps and frantic whispers. Some flee deeper into the city, clutching scrolls to their chests as if shielding living souls. Others stay, forming human chains to move crates away from the encroaching heat. But the wind is merciless. Embers carried from the harbor settle on rooftops, sparking smaller fires that leap from building to building. Knowledge, so carefully gathered over generations, proves as fragile as dry leaves before a storm. From his fortified position near the royal palace, Caesar watches the inferno with a soldier's pragmatism. To him, the burning ships mean survival, the scrolls are collateral damage in the calculus of war. Yet even the Roman general cannot escape the symbolism of the moment. As flames consume the warehouses, the world witnesses not merely the destruction of buildings but the erasure of memory itself. When morning finally breaks, the harbor lies in ruins. Charred masts protrude from the blackened water like the bones of a drowned fleet. Smoke lingers in the air, carrying the bitter scent of burned papyrus. The library still stands, its inner sanctum spared by a twist of fortune or the desperate efforts of its defenders. But the damage is irreversible. Thousands of manuscripts, some unique, others painstakingly copied from distant lands, are gone. Ideas that might have reshaped mathematics, medicine, or astronomy dissolve into ash, their absence felt but never fully measured. Cleopatra emerges from this chaos as Caesar's ally and eventual lover, her political genius ensuring her survival. But even her legendary charm cannot restore what has been lost. She inherits a library wounded, its collection diminished, its stream of universal knowledge forever scarred. The scholars, though resilient, feel the weight of irretrievable absence. Eratosthenes is gone, but his successors sift through the soot, salvaging what they can. Catalogs must be rewritten. Collections reassembled. The Malacyon hums with renewed effort, but a subtle despair lingers like smoke in the air. Outside Alexandria, the world scarcely grasps the magnitude of the loss. To distant kings and philosophers, the burning of scrolls is a footnote in the saga of Roman expansion. Yet within the library's marble halls, the fire becomes legend, a warning whispered across generations. The dream of capturing all human knowledge has suffered its first great wound, not from neglect or decay, but from the fury of war. In the years that follow, the library strives to recover. New scrolls are sought from Greece, Mesopotamia, and India. Scholars continue their work, determined to outpace oblivion. But the memory of that night endures, a haunting reminder that knowledge, no matter how sacred, is never beyond the reach of human conflict. Each scroll copied, each text cataloged, carries with it the urgency of survival. Twilight returns to the Mediterranean. The Pharos lighthouse resumes its steady vigil, casting light across waters once blackened by fire. Within the library, scribes bend over their desks, their pens scratching in defiance of impermanence. Outside, Rome's influence deepens, and new storms gather beyond the horizon. The blaze that scarred Alexandria is not the final catastrophe, merely a foretaste of darker nights to come. For now, the city endures. The library still breathes, though its heart beats more faintly. But the Mediterranean wind that once carried knowledge from every corner of the world has also carried fire, and the smell of smoke lingers, a reminder that the greatest enemy of wisdom is not ignorance, but the chaos of human ambition. Centuries pass, but the smoke of that first great fire never truly clears. Alexandria endures, its harbor rebuilt, its scholars replenished, but the library carries an invisible wound. Scrolls once thought eternal now exist only in memory, their absence a shadow that lengthens with each generation. The dream of gathering all human knowledge remains alive, yet its flame flickers under the relentless gusts of politics, war, and time. In the years after Caesar's siege, Cleopatra struggles to preserve her kingdom as Rome's influence deepens. The queen herself becomes a symbol of Alexandria's brilliance and fragility, dazzling, cunning, but forever balancing on the knife's edge of imperial ambition. When she falls and Egypt bends to Rome, the library enters a new era, one of uneasy survival under foreign masters. Roman governors admire its treasures but treat them as curiosities, not sacred trusts. The scrolls remain, but the patronage that once fueled their collection wanes. Still, scholars persist. New works are copied, catalogs updated, lost texts painstakingly reconstructed from fragments. The Malacyon continues to hum with debate, but its golden age fades into twilight. The great minds who once redefined the cosmos are gone, their successors forced to labor under tightening budgets and wary overseers. Knowledge, once celebrated as the lifeblood of a kingdom, now competes with the demands of empire. Time proves a more patient destroyer than flame. Earthquakes rattle the coastline, shaking marble columns and toppling statues. Floods seep into storerooms, warping scrolls with brine. Termites burrow through papyrus, turning words to dust one nibble at a time. Each disaster is small compared to Caesar's fire, yet each steals a little more from the library's vast inheritance. What cannot be burned can still be forgotten. Then, in the 3rd century CE, another storm descends. The Roman Empire, stretched thin and racked by internal strife, erupts into crisis. Civil wars flare across the Mediterranean, and Alexandria, wealthy, strategic, and restless, becomes a frequent battleground. Emperor Aurelian lays siege to the city in 272 CE, seeking to crush the rebellious Queen Zenobia of Palmyra. Fighting rages through the royal quarter, where the library still stands. Ancient chronicles hint at destruction. The Brucheian, the Grand Palace district that housed the Malacyon, suffers heavy damage. Whether the library's main collection survives this assault is a matter of debate, but once again flames and swords carve their way through the heart of Alexandria. What remains afterward is a fragment of a fragment. Later writers speak of smaller collections scattered through the city. The Serapeum, a daughter library housed in the great temple of Serapis, becomes the last refuge of the Alexandrian dream. Within its shadowed halls, priests and scholars guard the surviving scrolls as though protecting a dying flame. They copy what they can, preserving scraps of mathematics, astronomy, and medicine even as the empire around them begins to crumble. But the Serapeum, too, will face its reckoning. By the late 4th century, the Roman world is transformed. Christianity rises to dominance, sweeping away the old pagan orders. In 391 CE, under orders from Emperor Theodosius, the Serapeum is attacked by Christian zealots eager to erase the symbols of ancient religion. Statues are smashed, altars overturned, and the remaining scrolls, whether few or many, are scattered or destroyed. The last visible sanctuary of the Library of Alexandria falls silent. Outside the shattered temple, the city continues, its markets noisy with trade, its harbor alive with sails. Life moves on, indifferent to the treasures lost within the smoke. But the silence inside those ruined chambers is deafening. Generations of human thought, centuries of painstaking discovery, have vanished, not in a single night of fire but in a slow, relentless erosion. The world awakens to find itself poorer, though few can fully grasp the scale of what has disappeared. Legends grow in the vacuum left behind. Some speak of final catastrophes, of later caliphs whose soldiers burned what remained, of secret caches spirited away to distant lands. Historians debate the details, but the truth is both simpler and more tragic. The Library of Alexandria did not perish in one apocalyptic blaze. It died in pieces, consumed by war, neglect, fanaticism, and time itself. A scroll lost to damp is as irretrievable as one devoured by flame. As dusk settles over the Mediterranean, the Pharos lighthouse still casts its beam across the darkening sea, but its light no longer guides scholars bearing scrolls from distant horizons. In the quiet ruins of the Serapeum, where marble columns lie broken beneath drifting sand, the wind carries only echoes. Once, this city dreamed of capturing every thought the human mind could conceive. Now, it stands as a monument to the fragility of that dream, proof that even the greatest treasury of wisdom can crumble to dust, leaving only ashes of memory on the wind. Alexandria's marble halls have fallen silent, their shelves scattered or consumed, yet the ideas once nurtured within them refuse to die. Though the library itself is lost, fragments of its brilliance drift outward like seeds on the wind, taking root in lands far beyond the Nile. What perishes in stone and papyrus endures in memory, carried by travelers, traders, and wandering scholars who once passed through the city's luminous gates. Long before the final embers cooled, scrolls copied in Alexandria had already begun their long migration. Greek manuscripts of mathematics and philosophy journey westward to Rome, where Latin translators wrestle with the precision of Euclid's geometry and the daring cosmology of Aristarchus. Physicians in Pergamon studied the anatomical notes of Herophilus, blending them with their own practices. Roman architects borrowed Alexandrian principles of engineering, carrying the wisdom of the Nile into the aqueducts and amphitheaters of the empire. To the east, the caravan routes of the Silk Road became silent couriers of knowledge. From Alexandria's ports, sailors ferried papyrus copies to the Red Sea, where traders bound for India and beyond spread them across the Indian Ocean. In Babylon, scrolls of Greek astronomy found eager readers who merged them with Mesopotamian star lore. Indian mathematicians encountered Alexandrian treatises on numbers and geometry, absorbing and transforming them into the sophisticated calculations that would one day shape Arabic algebra. Even as the library's halls crumbled, its intellectual spirit found refuge in the scholars of Byzantium. In Constantinople, scribes carefully recopied Greek manuscripts, preserving the works of Archimedes, Ptolemy, and Euclid. These texts, some of them direct descendants of Alexandrian originals, became the lifeline through which ancient science would survive the coming dark centuries of Europe. Without these fragile chains of transmission, the Renaissance itself might never have awoken. Centuries later, the Islamic Golden Age would rekindle the embers of Alexandria's lost wisdom. In the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, scholars translated Greek manuscripts into Arabic, debating Aristotle and refining Ptolemaic astronomy. Al-Khwarizmi, the father of algebra, built upon mathematical concepts first catalogued in Alexandrian scrolls. Physicians like Avicenna drew upon the medical writings of Herophilus and Galen, expanding them into encyclopedias that would dominate European medicine for hundreds of years. In this way, the library's ghost walked the corridors of distant cities, whispering its secrets to new generations. Yet these echoes were never complete. For every text that survived, every theorem, every map of the stars, countless others vanished without a trace. We can only imagine the discoveries lost, treatises on technologies never rediscovered, philosophies never debated, histories never recorded. Did a forgotten astronomer glimpse the heliocentric truth centuries before Copernicus? Did an unknown mathematician conceive of equations that could have accelerated the understanding of physics? These questions linger like phantom constellations, visible only as absences in the night sky of human knowledge. The legend of the library itself becomes a force of inspiration. Medieval travelers tell tales of a place where all wisdom once resided, a paradise of scrolls whose destruction stands as a warning against human folly. Renaissance scholars, hungry to recover what has been lost, scour monasteries and private collections for remnants of the Alexandrian hoard. Each rediscovered manuscript, a copy of Euclid, a fragment of Ptolemy, is treated as a relic of a vanished age, a spark from the great fire that once lit the world. And yet, the library's true legacy is not merely the texts that survived but the ideal it embodied. The dream of gathering all human knowledge into one place remains irresistible. From the medieval universities of Europe to the vast repositories of the modern era, every great library is a child of Alexandria, an echo of the ambition to preserve the whole of human thought against the erosion of time. Picture the scholars of Baghdad poring over Greek manuscripts, their lamps burning late into the night. Imagine monks in Irish scriptoria, painstakingly copying ancient texts as storms batter the stone walls outside. See the scholars of the Renaissance lifting dusty manuscripts into the light, their hearts quickening as they rediscover truths first spoken beneath the marble colonnades of the Mount Sion. Though the original library is gone, its vision lives on in every hand that copies, in every mind that seeks to understand. As the centuries unfold, the Pharos lighthouse itself eventually collapses into the sea, its stones swallowed by the tides. But the light it once cast lingers, transmuted into the illumination of ideas that leap across cultures and epochs. The Library of Alexandria may have fallen into ashes, but its echoes resound in every observatory, every laboratory, every shelf where knowledge waits for a curious mind. Across the sweep of history, Alexandria reminds us that wisdom cannot be caged within walls. Papyrus burns, marble crumbles, empires fall, but the hunger to know survives every catastrophe. From Baghdad to Florence, from Oxford to the digital vaults of the present day, the spirit of that ancient dream travels onward, whispering that while books may perish, the quest for understanding is eternal. Night settles over the ruins of Alexandria, and with it comes a fog of stories, half-truths, conjectures, and whispered legends that blur the line between memory and invention. What was once a living library of scrolls and voices now survives as rumor, carried across centuries by poets, chroniclers, and dreamers who refuse to let the silence stand unchallenged. Some tales speak of a single catastrophic blaze, a night when the library's shelves were swallowed by an inferno so vast it reddened the sea. Roman chronicles place the blame on Julius Caesar's siege of 48 BCE, when flames meant to block the Egyptian fleet leapt from the harbor to the city itself. In these accounts, thousands of scrolls vanished in one breath of fire, a tragedy witnessed by soldiers who knew they were destroying the very map of the world. Others shift the moment of doom to later centuries. There is the account of Emperor Aurelian's 3rd century assault, when civil war turned Alexandria's royal quarter into a battlefield. Or the riot of 391 CE, when Christian zealots tore down the Serapeum and toppled the old gods. And then the most persistent of all, the story of the Caliph Omar, who in the 7th century allegedly ordered the burning of every scroll, declaring that if they agreed with the Quran they were unnecessary, and if they disagreed they were dangerous. Historians have long debated this tale, many dismissing it as later propaganda, but it endures because it speaks to a universal fear that ideology can smother curiosity in smoke. Yet behind each dramatic version lies a more complex truth. The library's death was not a single night of fire but a long twilight of neglect and attrition. Scrolls were misplaced, damaged, eaten by insects, ruined by damp air and careless hands. Wars came and went, each claiming a few more shelves. In the end, what vanished was not merely the product of flames but of centuries of human fragility, the failure to protect, to preserve, to care. The tragedy is not just that the library was destroyed, but that no one noticed exactly when the last scroll turned to dust. Legends fill the void left by certainty. Medieval writers imagined secret vaults where rescued manuscripts still sleep beneath the sands, waiting for discovery. Treasure hunters and scholars alike have searched for such caches, hoping for a miracle find, a sealed chamber beneath the modern city, a forgotten cave in the desert. None have succeeded, but the dream persists, each rumor rekindling the possibility that some fraction of the lost wisdom might yet return. The myths themselves become part of the library's legacy. Every generation retells the story in its own image. For Romans, it was a warning of careless conquest. For medieval Muslims, a tale of faith and hubris. For modern scholars, a parable of human impermanence. Whether the fire belonged to Caesar, Christians, or caliphs matters less than the lesson each version seeks to teach. The library becomes not merely a place, but a mirror, reflecting the anxieties of those who contemplate its loss. And fragments do remain, scattered like stars across the intellectual sky. Euclid's Elements, Ptolemy's Almagest, the medical writings of Galen, the plays of Sophocles, many of these survive through copies made before the final erasures. Through these texts we catch glimpses of what once filled the shelves, lost comedies of Menander, treatises on steam power, maps of the known world traced with exquisite precision. They are shards of a shattered mosaic, enough to reveal the shape of a masterpiece we can never fully restore. Stand today on the site where the Brucheium once rose. Beneath the traffic in stone of modern Alexandria lie the buried foundations of palaces and lecture halls, their scrolls long turned to dust. The harbor that once welcomed ships from every corner of the known world now carries only the restless murmur of waves. Yet if you listen carefully, the wind seems to carry a faint rustle, as though 1,000 fragile pages were still turning in the dark. The library's greatest gift may be this haunting absence, a reminder of how easily knowledge can be lost, and how fiercely it must be protected. Its story endures not because we know every detail, but because we do not. The uncertainty keeps the imagination alive, compelling each generation to search, to rebuild, to gather the scattered pieces of wisdom before they too are claimed by time. Somewhere between myth and memory, the Library of Alexandria survives, not as a building of stone and papyrus, but as an eternal question. What more could we have known, if only we had guarded it better? What wonders still lie buried beneath our own careless present, waiting for a future historian to mourn their passing? The answers remain hidden, but the echoes linger, urging us to hold tightly to the fragile flame of knowledge before the winds of history rise again. Morning light spills over modern Alexandria, gilding apartment balconies and fishing boats as gulls wheel above the harbor. Beneath this ordinary bustle lies a city of ghosts. The stones of the Brucheium rest under asphalt and seawall, the foundations of the great Malsion hidden beneath centuries of rubble. No scrolls remain, no scholars pace the colonnades. Yet the dream that once animated these vanished halls still pulses through the veins of humanity, undimmed by time or tragedy. Across the world, the idea of a universal library has become an unending pursuit. In medieval Baghdad, the House of Wisdom gathered Greek, Persian, and Indian manuscripts, echoing Alexandria's ambition to embrace the whole of human understanding. In Renaissance Europe, printers raced to recover and replicate ancient texts, their presses churning out the words of Plato and Euclid as if rescuing sparks from a dying fire. Every university archive, every national library, every digitized database that seeks to preserve all knowledge is an heir to the Alexandrian vision. Yet the dream is both inspiration and warning. The library's fall reminds us that no collection is invincible, that knowledge is as mortal as the civilizations that cherish it. Fires may not consume modern data centers, but wars, neglect, and the quiet erosion of digital obsolescence remain ever-present threats. Alexandria whispers across the centuries, what we fail to safeguard today may become tomorrow's irretrievable silence. Still, the quest continues with a fervor that would have amazed the scholars of the Malsion. In subterranean vaults beneath mountains, servers hum with the constant heartbeat of the internet, archiving billions of pages. Satellites map the heavens with a precision that Ptolemy could scarcely imagine. Deep in Antarctic ice, scientists store seeds from every corner of the globe, a living library of the planet itself. Where the ancients sought to gather scrolls, we now gather genomes, algorithms, and the flickering data of an entire species. Even here, in Alexandria itself, the dream has been reborn. On the city's sunlit shoreline stands the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, a sleek disk of glass and granite tilted toward the sea. Inside, millions of books line vast reading rooms flooded with light, their spines reflecting the languages of every continent. Scholars tap keyboards where scribes once sharpened reeds, their screens glowing with the accumulated wisdom of millennia. It is not the old library reborn, its scrolls are gone forever, but it is a declaration of defiance against the oblivion that once claimed this place. Walk its halls and you will feel the weight of both loss and hope. In the silence between footsteps, you may imagine the voices of the past, Archimedes murmuring equations, Eratosthenes tracing the circumference of the earth, physicians dissecting the mysteries of the human body. Their works may be incomplete, their names half forgotten, but their spirit lingers in every shelf that bends beneath the weight of new discoveries. The tragedy of Alexandria is not only what was lost but what it teaches about the fragility of civilization itself. Knowledge is not a static treasure, it is a living flame that must be fed, shared, and defended. When societies turn inward, when politics, ideology, or apathy eclipse curiosity, the flame gutters and the darkness grows. The library's fate is a cautionary tale, a reminder that human brilliance can vanish not only in sudden fire but in slow neglect. Yet there is another lesson, one far more hopeful. Though countless works perished, the ideas seated here still shape our understanding of the universe. The mathematics of Euclid, the astronomy of Ptolemy, the medical theories of Galen, all traveled outward, copied and recopied across continents and centuries. Knowledge proved more resilient than the walls that once contained it. The library burned, but its stream survived. Picture the chain of minds that stretches from those ancient scholars to the present. A Greek mathematician teaches an Arab astronomer inspires a European physicist unlocks the code of the stars. Each generation builds upon the fragments left by the last, carrying forward a torch first lit on the shores of the Mediterranean. In this way, the Library of Alexandria is not merely a ruin of the past but a living force within every discovery we make today. And still, the mystery lingers. Somewhere in the labyrinth of history, scraps of lost works may remain, buried in desert caves, hidden in forgotten monasteries, preserved in fragments beneath the sea. Perhaps a single papyrus waits in darkness, carrying the thoughts of a mind centuries ahead of its time. The possibility keeps explorers searching, historians digging, scientists scanning the sands and silt for any trace of the library's vanished heart. But perhaps the greater treasure is not what might be recovered, but what the search itself awakens. The library's absence drives us to ask, to seek, to imagine what might have been. It fuels the restless hunger for understanding that defines us as a species. In the void left by its loss, we are reminded that the pursuit of knowledge is not a luxury, but a necessity, the very force that lifts humanity beyond the accidents of fate. Stand now on the Alexandrian coast as the sun dips toward the horizon. The Mediterranean glows like molten bronze, the same sea that once carried ships heavy with scrolls from Greece, India, and distant lands. The wind carries the scent of salt and the faint murmur of waves against stone. Somewhere beneath these waters lie the ruins of the Pharos lighthouse, the shattered columns of the Mouse Ion, the buried traces of a dream. But overhead, the sky is alive with stars, points of light that Ptolemy once charted, that modern astronomers still measure, that no fire can erase. The Library of Alexandria is gone, yet its echo endures in every question we dare to ask, every fragment we fight to preserve, every mind that hungers to know more. Its loss is a wound, but also a promise, that knowledge, though fragile, is never truly finished. As long as curiosity burns, the flame once kindled on these shores will never be extinguished.